I wanted to show you some examples of typical Illustrator files. And here's one that I grabbed off the web. Actually, this is a placed graphic into an Illustrator file, but it is an example of the type of work that you can do very easily in Illustrator because it contains straight lines, nice smooth curves, gradients, and then also that has blurred drop shadows, which you can do using a variety of filters. And I just wanted to show you a selection, just a random selection that I got off the web. If you just do a search for Illustrator files or examples. So here, I think typical of a lot of Illustrator files is the cleanliness, really, and that's really the main use for Illustrator files, is that you can have images that are not so sharply defined. So let me just show you some other examples. So here actually has a little bit of extra image in it, but you can see this is an example of a very clean looking logo, or something that could potentially be applied to a logo. Again, the use of gradients, nice smooth lines. And here, again, this is very typical of Illustrator. More gradients, very smooth flowing lines. And here, this is actually a very good example of the use of Illustrator in a highly precise use, or what it's actually a very specialized use of Illustrator, where you can do these extremely technical and but extremely accurate drawings. Like, I think designers would use this to do some of these highly detailed drawings of car engines or mechanical parts, or things that are very engineered and precise. Again, these are not Illustrator files themselves. I'll show you some actual examples, but I just wanted to show you snapshots of them. And here's one a little bit more typical. Very flat colors, but very precise edges. And another one. Okay, so to demonstrate scalability, so I actually had one of these, so just to show you the difference. So even though at this resolution, or this view percentage, this drawing looks fairly precise, if I were to take my magnifying or zoom tool and go in, so here you can actually see the pixels. So that's the definition of a raster image. Once you blow it up, you'll start to see the way an image has been constructed. So I'm just going to zoom back out. And let's turn this off. Now I'm just going to make a simple shape, and we'll jump to that particular feature of creating a shape or something to work with. So these are the shape tools. You have a range of different preset shapes. So you have rectangle, rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star, and flare, the rarely used flare. But I'm going to make an ellipse tool. And when I click and drag, you can see the shape in the process of being made. I still have the mouse down, and so it's still active, so I can reshape it. So it's similar to making doing an elliptical marquee selection. So as long as you continue to hold the mouse down, that shape is still dynamic. So once I release, so now what I have is an Illustrator object. And if I want to move that, then I need to use this tool. It's called the selection tool, one of the most basic tools. Notice what happens when I select it. I get a bounding box. And this is another similarity to working with Photoshop, is that when you do a transform, and that's what we're doing when you click something, not only can you move it, you can transform it. So again, this is something you should be familiar with from working with Photoshop. You can use to drag your control handles to scale, and also you remember modifying keys if you want to maintain the proportions or the ratios. Release. Okay, so another thing about working with Illustrator, and this is we created a shape. It's also the term that they use in Illustrator. This is also called an object. When most all Illustrator illustrations can contain many hundreds of individual objects. That's the term that they use, or individual paths. So, but before I get into that, I just want to describe here, way down at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of your toolbar, you have two squares. And I'm just going to make a quick comparison to Photoshop. In that case, it was foreground, background. But in Illustrator, the most basic, essential components of every object is to have a stroke, fill, either a stroke, or just a fill. And this is set to the default, so that means a white fill. Even though you can't see the white color, it's against a white background. It looks hollow, but there is color information on the inside. But it has a black outline. And they call that, in Illustrator, a stroke. Now, a stroke with the term that they use to measure that is called the weight of a stroke. And you can adjust that width of a stroke if you go up and look into your control panel. Since we have an object selected, these options become available. There's a lot of repetition of where the controls are. So here we also have controls to alter the fill and the stroke. So here, if I wanted to apply a different color, I could do that from a couple of different places. If I click on here, that brings up a swatches panel. And there I can choose a color, and it gets filled. But I wanted to get back to the point of resolution independence. So I'm going to take my zoom tool and zoom very tight in. So this is at, I don't know what the total percentage is, but it's very high. I can keep zooming. I think I've actually maxed it out. Oh, here we go. It's at 6,400%. So I'm zooming right in, and still that curved line is perfectly smooth. If this were a raster image, you'd see the stepping. So I'm just going to zoom back. And let's just, for variety, I'm going to create an additional object, and we're going to do a rectangle. Also notice I'm going to place this rectangle and give it a different color. Oops. See, actually here, this is a common trip up in when you're first using. So when I wanted to apply a different color to the blue area, but when I clicked and chose a different color, you could see that in Illustrator, you have to make sure, wherever you want to apply that color, you have to make sure that it's to the front or active. So here, if I want to change the fill color, I just have to make sure that the fill box is to the front. So now I have a yellow fill with a red stroke. So what happened here, when I created a new object, it will start to create its own stacking order. So any new object will automatically be placed on top. So this is the equivalent of creating an additional layer in Photoshop, where you can put additional images and then arrange them. Then you can rearrange the stacking order by rearranging the layers. In Illustrator, if I wanted to send this to the back, the command is called arrange. So you can do that by first selecting, and that's always the first step in anything that you do. You always have to make sure that you target that specific object. I want to send this to the back. So that's done from within the object menu. Second option down. Then we have a list of 4 arrange options. So bring to the front, it's already in the front. Bring forward. So these two options, if something is way in the back or anywhere but the front, this will send it to the front. This will bring it up to the next level, so it goes up one level at a time. So here, I want to send it to the back. And now the blue object, or the blue circle, is now in front of the yellow square. Okay. So I just demonstrated a range. Okay, transforming. So not only can you move, I showed you, if you drag onto your control handles, you can distort, flip, rotate. But if you want even more control, so if I wanted to do something that didn't have right angles at each corner, then I would use this tool. And the difference between these two tools, the black one's called the selection tool, and the white one's called the direct selection tool. So here, if I just wanted to access this anchor point, then I simply click on that anchor point. Now I have control over just that anchor point. So now I can get more randomized, more irregular shapes. I could, just move a object. If I don't target specifically any anchor point, then I won't get a control. But also here, I just want to point out that here I was altering individual anchor points. And it's important if you just want to do just one anchor point, that has to be the first thing selected in that object. If I click in the center, you can see all my anchor points, and this is where you can tell whether an anchor point is selected or not. You can see that it's a solid blue color. If I deselect, and you do that just by clicking in any blank area. So now I'm going to click on that area. So now it's solid blue, but all the other points are hollow. So that just lets me know that this is the active or the movable point. So these are corner points. If I go over to the circle, and also I want to point out a little pause here. I want to see that I have turned on. You can see as I mouse over or hover over, you can see little words pop up. This is what's called a smart guide. Smart guides are very handy because it helps you identify exactly where your mouse is positioned on. So it tells me I'm over a path. Now it tells me that I'm over an anchor point. It'll actually kind of snap to it. When I click on that, then I get these. These are control handles. These control handles give me even more control over curvature. So when I click on that, you can see it's like I was using the example of seesaw, but I don't think anybody uses seesaws anymore. Anyway, so you can see the control. This gets takes a little getting used to, just because it's not that intuitive. Because as I'm moving it around, you can see it's not a direct control over that path. It's a little bit removed. It's just something you have to play around with to get a sense of how you can manipulate a shape. So that's the direct selection tool, and these are control handles. Okay, another, let's